Welcome to Tales from the HOA, where neighborhood drama meets justice served. Today's story is one of greed, betrayal, and the power of standing up for what's right. Buckle up. This one's a wild ride. While my cousin General Marcus was serving overseas, our power-hungry HOA president, Karen Matthews, seized the opportunity to target his time-honored family estate. What she never anticipated was his early return, accompanied by a U.S. senator on speed dial. Can you believe that a mere property infraction set off a chain reaction that dragged half the HOA board into federal court and transformed our quiet suburb into a national scandal over veteran rights? I'll never forget that morning when I caught Karen snapping pictures of my cousin's house. She didn't bother to hide what she was doing. Instead, she stood there in her designer workout clothes, her perfectly manicured nails tapping away on her phone. Those same hands had once approved her husband's construction company contracts, and now they were busy documenting what she called violations at Marcus's home. I stepped up to her, coffee still in hand, and asked, "Excuse me, Karen, but what exactly are you doing?" I had been watching her circle Marcus's colonial mansion from my kitchen window for the past 15 minutes, much like a vulture circling its prey. With an overly saccharine good morning, a smile so fake it could have shattered glass, she replied, "I'm just documenting some serious maintenance issues. The paint is clearly 2 shades off from the approved HOA color scheme. And these hedges," she said, gesturing dramatically toward a meticulously trimmed shrub, "are at least half an inch above regulation." I exhaled deeply, remembering the advice General Marcus had instilled in me. Always keep your cool. "Karen, Marcus is actively serving our country. He's a general. And this house has been in our family for 4 generations. Listen," she retorted dismissively, "the paint was approved 3 years ago by the previous board. Deployment is no excuse for letting property values drop. Did you know the community center proposal could increase home values by 30%? That was the first time I'd heard about any community center. I continued to watch her snap more photos, my stomach churning as I recalled how the last 3 homeowners who dared stand up to her ended up with liens mysteriously placed on their properties. That afternoon, I combed through every HOA document I could find, even those tucked away in last month's meeting minutes. Hidden among the pages was a proposal for a state-of-the-art community center, set to be built right in the center of our block, exactly where Marcus's house stood. The following week became a blur of certified letters arriving at Marcus's home, each one citing another absurd violation. Suddenly, even the brass knocker, which had withstood 2 world wars, was declared non-compliant, and the rose bushes his daughter had planted before his deployment were labeled invasive species. I tried calling Marcus, but military communications were restricted during his current operation. All I could do was send emails, uncertain whether he'd receive them in time. Every day, more HOA board members drove by, meticulously taking notes. I even installed security cameras after catching Karen's husband, Richard, measuring the property line at midnight with nothing but a flashlight for guidance. The final straw came when I saw Karen leading a group of suited investors on a tour of our street. I overheard her saying, "This entire area is going to be transformed. The outdated structures will be removed, starting with that eyesore," as she pointed directly at Marcus's house. That night, I called Marcus's daughter, Lydia, who was away at college. "Something's not right," I confided. "I think they're planning something big, and your father's deployment makes his house an easy target." Her voice trembled as she replied, "But Dad is supposed to be home in 2 weeks. They can't just take our house. Our family photos, your mom's garden, everything is there." I longed to reassure her, but I knew Karen had already survived 3 lawsuits from other homeowners. She knew precisely how to manipulate the system. No sooner had I hung up than a certified letter arrived. The HOA was calling an emergency meeting for the following night to vote on the community center proposal. My heart nearly stopped when I read the fine print. The meeting was scheduled exactly 13 days before Marcus's return date. one day short of the 2-day notice mandated by federal law for deployed service members. It was then that I realized, with mounting horror, that Karen had planned this meticulously. This wasn't merely about property values or a community center. It was personal, and she had been plotting it for months. That night, I locked Marcus's front door, unable to shake the feeling that these might be the last few hours our family still owned this home. On the wall hung a photo of Marcus receiving his first command, a reminder that he had taught me battles are won with strategy, not brute strength. As I walked home, Karen's porch light flickered on. There she was, standing in her doorway in a silk robe, watching me with that signature cutting smile. "Better take some pictures," she called sweetly. "For the memories." Little did she know, I was already devising a counter-strategy of my own. The next morning, I awoke to the rumble of heavy machinery rolling down our street at 6:30 a.m. Through my bedroom window, I saw 3 yellow bulldozers and a large dump truck making their way straight toward Marcus's house. My heart pounded as I hurriedly put on my shoes and grabbed the folder of legal documents I'd been safeguarding ever since Karen began issuing threats. Barely had the morning fog lifted when I dashed outside in my pajamas, only to find Karen already there in her designer workout clothes, tapping on her iPad with that ever-present insincere smile. 2 police cars were parked nearby, evidence that she had orchestrated every detail. "Stop!" I yelled, running toward her while clutching Marcus's deployment papers. "This house belongs to an active service member. You can't do this." My hands trembled as I held up the power of attorney documents that Marcus had entrusted to me. Karen just laughed and kept tapping on her iPad. "Oh, sweetie," she said without even looking up. "The board held an emergency meeting last night and voted unanimously for immediate demolition due to alleged severe structural issues." At last, she looked up, her eyes turning icy. "It's all perfectly legal. We even have a report from a city inspector." I felt sick to my stomach. "What inspector?" "I've been here every day." The demolition crew chief, looking uncomfortable, shuffled over as I thrust Marcus's property tax receipts at him. "Everything's paid up. They can't do this." Karen stepped in between us. "Actually, we haven't received any tax payments for 6 months." "What a shame." She then produced a thick folder. "We sent multiple notices. I suppose they were lost in the mail to wherever your cousin is stationed." My hands shook as I checked my banking app. There they were, 6 canceled checks to the HOA, all cleared by their bank. "You cashed these checks." "I have proof right here." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Those payments were allocated to other outstanding violations. See these reports? Overgrown grass, unauthorized paint color, non-compliant mailbox height." She listed as the sound of bulldozer engines grew louder. I called Marcus's lawyer while pacing on the sidewalk, repeatedly urging, "Pick up, pick up, pick up." But the call went to voicemail, and the police officers on scene merely observed, saying they couldn't interfere in a civil matter. I felt utterly helpless as the demolition crew began setting up their equipment. Neighbors started emerging, drawn by the commotion. Most kept their distance, but elderly Mrs. Lynn from next door ambled over with her phone held high, recording every moment. I remember when Marcus's grandparents built this house, she declared loudly, right after he came back from Korea. The whole neighborhood pitched in. Karen glared at her as the bulldozer claw ascended, and I fought back tears. Then my phone rang. The screen showed Marcus's smiling face in full uniform. My hands trembled so badly, I nearly dropped it. "Hey, cousin," he said cheerfully. "You won't believe it. I managed to snag an early flight and just landed at the airport. I thought I'd surprise everyone." I stared in disbelief at the bulldozer creeping toward his front porch, the very spot where we once sipped lemonade in the summer, where his daughter learned to read, and where his wife spent her final days. My voice cracked as I said, "Marcus, you need to get here right now." "Karen, they're about to." But the crunch of splintering would interrupt me as the bulldozer claw took its first devastating bite out of our family's history. Behind me, Karen was already on her phone. Yes, honey, they're starting now. Make sure your crew is ready to break ground for the community center next week. She paused and added, and the permits? Don't worry about those. I've got it all handled. The roar of the bulldozers drowned out everything else as I watched my cousin's life unravel before my eyes, praying he'd arrive in time. Little did I know that Karen's perfectly orchestrated plan was on the verge of spectacularly backfiring in ways none of us could have predicted.